So worksheet number 4, which has your T cells and your B cells on it. Hello. This is going to be going over specific immunity and how that works. So we, like I said earlier, we just went over innate immunity, which is immunity everyone has. This is specific. So, if I get chickenpox, I don't get them again because of my specific immunity. I adapted. So this is a little review. Circle each one as either innate or adaptive. So general defenses everyone is born with, this is innate. Your specific immunity is adaptive, precise with specific antigens, the key word is specific, that's adaptive, and recognizes particular foreign molecules, that's also adaptive. So everything in your immune system recognizes foreign molecules. It knows that if something's not supposed to be there, but your specific is like if it's particular. If it's the chickenpox virus, that's specific. Is it the strep bacteria? First line of defense, that's innate. Second line of defense is innate. Third line of defense is adaptive. So you only have 3 defenses, and the only first line of defense you have is your skin. Second line of defense is like inflammation, fever, that complement, all that we just went over. Third line of defense is your T cells, your B cells, and your antibodies, which is what this worksheet is going to be covering. So we're going to go through. The adaptive specific defense utilizes B cells and T cells. This is true. This is because T cells and B cells are able to distinguish molecules as self and non-self. Next statement is also true. All pathogens have antigens, but not all antigens are pathogens. So an antigen is also known as the identity. Skinny ghost. So on your pathogens, they have stuff on the surface of them that are called antigens. That's what these little things are right here. Those are your antigens on the surface of it. So all pathogens have antigens. All pathogens have identities. However, not all antigens belong to pathogens. What's an example of this? Yeah, of an antigen that's not bad. Your red blood cell. Yeah. So all pathogens have antigens. All pathogens, all issues have these antigens on them, but not all antigens are actually pathogens. It could just be a red blood cell. However, so some people get this mixed up, but they'll be like, well, what about your blood? But as far as the immune system goes, whenever you see the word pathogen, it's talking about antigens. So we'll talk about antibodies and antigens. Antigens and pathogens are pretty much pretty similar to each other. But then you'll have antibodies, especially the B part of body, and then you'll have B cells. So that's when we talk about antibodies attack antigens. B cells attack pathogens. So that's just kind of going through, because I know having the beginning portions of the word can be kind of confusing. So that is that. T cells secrete antibodies is false. B cells secrete antibodies, just like how I highlighted over here, B cells and antibodies. There are 2 types of specific immunity. Are you okay if I read? I took a picture of this. Okay. All right, so this whole session, okay, we have immunity, right? We had our innate immunity, And our innate immunity was like fever, skin, you know, that whole worksheet, I think worksheet number 3. Okay? And then we have our specific immunity. And our specific immunity is divided into 2 categories. We have cellular mediated, and we have humoral or humoral. And our cellular mediated immunity utilizes T cells. Our humoral immunity utilizes B cells. Our other white blood cells are under innate immunity. But these are our, utilizes these 2 things, are categorized as lymphocytes. That's what your T cells and your B cells are lymphocytes. But they are white blood cells also. These are like your neutrophils, your monocytes, your eosinophils. Those are your other ones. But does this kind of help kind of put it together? Okay. So talk about this one. We're going to talk about cellular mediated first, and then humoral. Direct cell-to-cell contact is known as cellular mediated immunity, right? It's direct. You know, how do T cells kill things? T cells kill things by, like, if we were people, if I were a T cell, I would directly stab someone, and that is cell-to-cell contact. I stab them, they die. Cell mediated. Humoral immune responses, though, do not do cell-to-cell contact. This is as if someone was standing right in front of me and like I shot a bow and arrow at them. So if I like threw something at them, if I am the B cell, this marker is an antibody, and I guess that trash. Ooh, good thing I didn't throw it. Hi. Yeah, humoral. Oh, hello. Do you have these? Okay. Yeah, so your humoral immune response does not complete cell-to-cell contact. It utilizes antibodies. And what is something about what is humoral? What does that mean? Humoral means like fluid, like blood. So your B cells utilizes the blood for you to transport antibodies through. And the antibodies are what kills the pathogen. So that is that. So next we have 4 properties of the adaptive specific defense. So this is what really defines your specific immunity, are these factors. They are antigen specific, chickenpox virus or strep bacteria or strep virus or, whatever, antigen specific. The antigens are the identity, so it's specific to that. Systemic, the systemic portion of the specific immunity has to do with your antibodies and your B cells. So humoral immunity, right? Your blood is a connective tissue. It connects your entire body. So it is systemic. Your immune system flows through your bloodstream and through your lymph capillaries. Memory, well, this has to do with specific also. If I get the chickenpox virus, I will not get it again because my body, or the flu, my body will remember it and it will know how to defeat it. So I don't even have those welts, or I don't even have the symptoms. And then diversity. You have a large, right now we're just focused on B cells and T cells, and we did talk about some white blood cell stuff. But overall, your immune system has a large diversity. So there are very many methods to kill things that get into your body, which are nice. And they work hand in hand. And this is just a little bit of a vocabulary term. Haptens are antigenic that can evoke an immune response independently. This is false. Haptens are small molecules. They are not antigenic by themselves, so they can't destroy things by themselves. But when they combine with another large molecule, then they can actually cause an immune reaction to occur. So that's a little random, but it's in the reading, so I don't know where to put it, except for right there. So we're going to start out with your cellular immune response. So we're going to talk about, since it's talking about cellular immune responses, we're going to be talking about T cells. So T cells specializes in the thymus. So you have many specialties of T cells. You have, and we're going to go through these. You have your cytotoxic T cells, your memory T cells, and your helper T cells. Your helper T cells are really important. But overall, T cells, all of three categories make up 70 to 80% of lymphocytes. Lymphocytes being your B cells and your T cells. Those are your lymphocytes. T cells settles in the lymphatic organs, the lymph nodes, thoracic duct, and the spleen's white pulp, and they help a cellular mediated immune response. So a lymphocyte, so a number 9 statement, a lymphocyte can respond to an antigen without being activated. This is false. In order for a T cell, to actually work, it needs help. It needs to become activated by an antigen presenting cell. And we're going to go through the process, which can be a macrophage, B cell, or other type of cell. But we're going to go through the process of how does this actually connect when we get to, worksheet number 8. So just for now, just kind of know that that's a well-known fact. T cells need antigen presenting cells to work. An antigen presenting cell is typically a macrophage. This is true. They can be B cells also and another type of cells, but typically they are macrophages. Moving on from there, so I'm going to draw really fast. So if an antigen, so this is your T cell. Your T cell needs an antigen-presenting cell. So how do antigen-presenting cells work? Well, this is a macrophage right here. So it's going to eat the ghost. So basically, when you're macrophage, when you're, oh God, it looks like it has a huge brain. When your macrophage consumes something that's bad, they have antigens on their surface. That's their identity. So what a macrophage will do is it'll eat this antigen and it will digest it and break it up and slice it up in little pieces. The leftover portions are the antigens, its identity, and the macrophage will then take these antigens and put it on its own surface. And it will display the antigen. That's why macrophages associates taking these and putting them on its surface. So a macrophage is thus an antigen presenting cell. So this is a cell that displays, so it's like showing the body, like this is what the antigen looks like. But the reason why it does this is because if the T cell was to come in direct contact with an antigen, or with a pathogen that had that structure on its surface, it would destroy the T cell. So the T cells need a little extra help to be activated. So when the T cell detects this antigen, that's when it becomes activated and it's, ready to do stuff. Whatever. So when an antigen presenting cell right here digests the pathogen and it displays its antigen fragments on its own membrane, these little fragments that it displays are known as MHC, and this is a histocompatibility complex. So histo, I believe, means tissue or something, but basically compatibility. So it is compatible. This complex, this is what the complex is just this area, is compatible with the immunity. So the immunity can work, is basically what it's saying. Number 12, you're just going to circle them and cross out the other one. We're going to be talking about T cells, right? We're talking about cellular mediated. The T cell encounters the antigen presenting cell, right here, and it recognizes the antigen as foreign. And then the T cell becomes activated, so then it can do stuff. So the T cells need antigen presenting cells. The T cells will then secrete cytokines to increase cellular response to the antigen. And like I said, over worksheet number 8, we'll go over this more in depth. Does this kind of make sense? Okay. So there you have 3 different kinds of T cells. You have your very helper T cells, and they all have different attitudes. I try to personify them. Your helper T cells are very good. If you don't have your helper T cells, the rest of your immunity will not work. You need your helper T cells more than anything. Actually, AIDS is a condition with the HIV virus that attacks your helper T cells. And once your helper T cells don't work, then the rest of your immunity don't work. This is why people with AIDS or the HIV virus, if they get an infection, it's very serious because they cannot fight it off. So that's that. Helper T cells helps activate B cells and help humoral mediated immunity. So it helps. Helper T cells secrete cytokines to help stimulate T helper cells, cytotoxic T cells, and B cells. So your helper T cells activate and stimulate other cells to do things. It is like the commander or the boss. The next one is kind of like a maniac or psychopath, to be honest. This one performs cell-mediated immunity. These are your cytotoxic T cells. So have you guys seen like the new Wonder Woman at all? No? Okay. Well, in it there's like a villain and she works with like chemicals, and it's like kind of a historical fiction setting. And this woman whose name is like Dr. Poison is the one who came up with poison gas that like wiped out tons of troops and like was able to lead like the German army to become powerful. So whenever I think of cytotoxic, when I saw that, I'm like, she's a cytotoxic T cell, I'm telling you what. But anyway, so cytotoxic T cells, they're very toxic. These are the ones that actually do a lot of the fighting, the stabbing, and all of that in your body. They're, like I said, they're psychopaths. They directly attack and kill tissues. It has buddies that helps kill them, those kinds of things. There's perforons, and perforons cut pores into things, right? Because if you have a cell and it has pores in it, then you can destroy it a lot easier. So that's what perforons do, cut pores. And then you also have lymphotoxins, and these are just things that secrete toxins. These kind of help cytotoxic T cells. Cytotoxic T cells, I don't know for some reason, but they really like attacking cancer. So it's quite a bit to be throwing at you, but so that's a cytotoxic T cell. The next one you have is memory T cell. Memory T cells are created, so when you have an infection for the first time, you don't have memory T cells. It's only after you get over the infection that you get memory T cells later on. So they're created during the initial infection, but they don't really respond. They don't do anything because they're just now starting out. I like to think of memory T cells as like soldiers in training. They're just starting out, so they become, they are created, they start training, but they don't actually do anything because they're just in training. Memory T cells can then they can specialize into cytotoxic T cells when they encounter the same antigen again. So when they get the antigen again, just say like, okay, I got chicken pox, now my memory T cells, get over chicken pox, memory T cells start producing, start being like, oh yeah, now we need to learn how to fight chicken pox. When I get chicken pox virus the second time, my memory T cells are like, oh, we're going to turn into cytotoxic T cells and kill that. So memory T cells can turn into different things. lastly, we have some functions of cytokines. So cytokines, let's see, okay. I'm gonna make sure we have all this, okay. So cytokines are like, so if I talk to you, I drew this earlier. So here's an immune cell. Here's another immune cell. And they're saying hi, or whatever, or maybe attack. Maybe that's more appropriate. This one's screaming attack at him. See, like this is an immune cell. This is an immune cell, and the communication is like the cytokine. So the cytokines is they're chemicals, but it's just like they're talking to each other, if that makes sense. So cytokines are like messages. So cytokines tell the body, or tells your T cells to activate, to start working. It causes T cells to divide and, spread out. Cytokines also stimulate the production of leukocytes in the bone marrow, so it causes you to produce more white blood cells, which we like when we get sick. Cytokines cause growth, maturation, and activation of B cells. And then T cells also activate macrophages. So, pretty important. You kind of need your cytokines for quite a bit of things. Next we have lymph, and you will get these as we go when I send it to you, but next we have lymphotoxins, and lymphotoxins are harmless, and they perform the same action as cytokines. This is false. Lymphotoxins are very harmful. They cause a lot of harm. They're toxic by all means, and yeah, so they're harmful. So if you change harmless to harmful, then you're good. Lymphotoxins either secrete toxic substances, just basically to kill, and also to stop growth, so they inhibit growth factors. Match me. So these are different classifications of lymphotoxins and cytokines. So interleukin, like interleukin 1, is in fever. This is a cytokine. Tumor necrosis factor is a cytokine. Colony stimulating factor is a cytokine, and the cytokine is also an interferon, which interferes with the growth of cancer and all sorts of bad things. But your lymphotoxins are just interferon. The others, so basically all of those are cytokines, and you should probably remember that, say the least. So that is that. The next thing we're going to be going over is humoral immune response, which is on this page, and then we're going to be hitting up on antibodies. So your humoral immune response has to do with your B cells, and this utilizes your blood to transport antibodies. So blood, B cells, antibodies. B cells mature in the fetus as a liver, but as an adult, they don't really know where they mature, but they're just saying red bone marrow for now. While your T cells mature in the thymus, your B cells, bone marrow. Sounds the same. B cells make up 20 to 30% of lymphocytes, lymphocyte being your B cell or T cell. They like to settle in lymphatic organs, but they're mainly lymph nodes, spleen, bone marrow, and intestinal lining. These provide humoral immunity by utilizing the antibodies and the blood. B cells depend on cytokines from T helper cells to become activated. This is true. So while it's not up there anymore. T helper cells need the antigen presenting cell to activate. B cells need the T helper cells. So T helper cells are activated first by antigen presenting cells, and then B cells are activated after. But we're going to go over this picture that'll really go through it. So just know, that's a fact. B cells also need to bind to specific antigens to be activated. So not only do they need T helper cells to lend them a hand, they do need to be exposed to the antigen to actually do something, because they need to say, like, oh wait, this is a threat. If they don't know that there's a threat, they're not going to do anything. So there's that. Humoral immunity response is also known as antibody mediated. So humoral immunity, it utilizes the blood. In the blood, there's antibodies. Antibodies are produced by B cells. So that's, B cells themselves don't come in direct contact with the threat. They produce antibodies. The antibodies is what kills the bacteria or the virus or the fungus. So just knowing about antibodies. Next, we have two types of B cells. You have memory B cells that provide future immunity. So these are memory B cells, are kind of like memory T cells. Okay, memory B cells are still in training. They're produced during the initial infection, but it isn't until they get exposed a second time, it isn't until you get sick a second time that memory B cells then divide and turn to memory B cells or plasma B cells. Plasma B cells, okay, right? Antibodies are produced in your bloodstream. They're put through your bloodstream, plasma B cells. Your plasma B cells produce the antibodies. Another thing too, antibodies are also known as immunoglobulins. So they mean the same thing, they're just two different words. So antibody and immunoglobulin. So you read that. This is a table of antibodies and also immunoglobulins. Like I said, it means the same thing, just spelled two different ways. What I put for you guys to fill out, I believe, is the keywords or the important things, and that's what I put in red up here. So your IgG, you can find this in your blood plasma, your tissue fluid. IgG makes up 80%, so the majority of your antibodies are going to be IgG. These attack bacteria, viruses, and toxins primarily. And what's really neat about IgG is that they can cross the placenta and provide passive immunity for the baby. So if the mom is pregnant, the mom has antibodies to attack a certain virus. IgG is the antibody that can cross the placenta and just give the baby some immunity. But it doesn't stimulate the baby's immunity to react. Just the antibodies are just in the baby. So that's nice. In a not so nice situation, you can have issues with Rh negative antibodies. Rh negative antibodies are classified as IgG antibodies. So they can cross the placenta. So this is a not so good situation. IgA also provides passive immunity, but it doesn't provide it through the placenta, it provides it through the milk. You can find a lot of IgA in glandular secretions such as your mucosa, your saliva, your milk, and your tears, IgA. So, like I said, glandular secretions, milk. IgA basically attacks antigens before they gain access to internal tissues. So an internal tissue, okay, if this is my tissue, this is mucus, and on my mucus, I'm going to have a lot of IgA. So it prevents, pathogens from getting to internal tissues. Basically what IgA does. So it's in your mucus and secretions. Lastly, like I said, passive immunity through the milk. Next we have, did you guys get this written all down? Okay. Next we have IgM. IgM is not very much, 6%, that's not very significant. IgM does two things. What is this? Its function is in the presence of bacteria and food antigens. So if you do a blood test and you got a lot of IgM, you probably have a bacterial infection. IgM also agglutinates blood in transfusions. So this is, so we talked about IgG, which was really an issue for, Rh negative antibodies on the red blood cell. You know, if the mom has Rh negative and the baby's Rh positive, that's an issue with IgG. With IgM, though, this is an issue with blood transfusion. So you just say I'm type A and I get type B blood. Well, what's going to happen is I'm going to have a transfusion reaction. So with IgM, you know, if you're type A, say your blood is type A, and then your antibodies, so my antigens are type A, but my immune system is going to attack anything that is type B. So it's going to be anti-B. So this is good because if I had anti-A immunity, it would attack myself, and I don't want that. I want anti-B. So what happens if I get a transfusion and I get someone's red blood cell who's type B, and they have B, my immune system's going to freak out and is going to try to attack this type B blood that just got into my body. So what's on this? So this anti-B antibody is classified as IgM. Sorry, IgM. It's going to take a little bit of reading through to get it, but that's the main rundown with. So it's with the blood again, you know. That's what the antibody A and B in the blood is talking about the immunity portion. Anti-B attacks anything that's B. Typically, the IgM is secreted first when you have an infection, but then, so when you have an infection, IgM is going to increase, and then IgG is going to come along and say, okay, I can take over now, IgM will go back down. So a lot of the time, I like to think of IgM as like the military, and when there's a threat, IgM steps in, you know, all the recruits come and attack it, and then IgG, I like to think of the government, comes by later and says, all right, military, back off, we got this, and the military goes away and does their own thing. So, kind of political. Our bodies are political. Next thing we have, I believe is second to last antibody. These are in glandular exocrine secretions, and this is IgE. So I like to think of IgE, allergy, kind of sounds the same. And IgE, allergy. IgE promotes an allergic reaction in inflammatory reactions. IgE attaches to basophils and mast cells and causes the release of histamine and other chemicals to cause inflammation. So basically with an allergy, when you inhale pollen or you inhale something that you're allergic to, or like peanuts especially, your body freaks out. And what's freaking out is your IgE, if it makes sense. So a lot of key words with IgE, definitely allergies, basophils and mast cells, and also histamine. Just that. That's all you need to know. Just those. And then we have, last one is IgD. And IgD is on the surface of most B cells, so especially in infants. So your B cells, you know, your regular immune, you know, you have T cells and B cells, the lymphocytes. Most B cells have IgD antibodies on the surface, and these act as antigen receptors, and it's important for B cell activation. So this is talking about blood type, type A and type B. Now we're going to talk about lymphocytes. So we have a B cell, and we have a T cell, okay? But we're going to talk about the B cell. On the surface, they have IgD antibodies. And IgD antibodies are important to activate B cells. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. If they don't have the IgD, they don't activate. Well, maybe some do. I don't know. There's exceptions. But for now, let's just know IgD is important for activation. So that concludes this worksheet. We're then going to move into worksheet number 5, which is going to talk about antibodies in action. So how do antibodies actually work? So this whole graph over here, this is the, okay, so we just got from B cells. We're now going to talk about, if I can make this further, antibodies. Okay, so that's what this next worksheet is over. So this is like the anatomy. This is what an antibody is, and these are the different categories. And now this Pac-Man ghost, this is going to be the physiology, like what do antibodies actually do? So that's what this is all about. We went over complement earlier, and I'll go over that later. But you just basically fill this out. I thought I did a matching to it, but it's like a fill in the thing, but we'll go over it. So worksheet number 5, don't save. So I'm just going to brush over complement, but you know, we'll make sure you get to it. So this is an infection right here. This is your infection. This is something that you do not want in your body. Your pathogen. The little lightning bolts are representing your antibodies. Like, what are your antibodies doing to attack it? So there's 3 methods that your antibodies attack. And I'm going to zoom in. And we're going to go to localized change. So localized change, there's only one method of localized change. And this is inflammation. So with inflammation, restricts, so we had this up here earlier. So this is your blood vessel, okay? Blood is flowing this way. You get cut. You have a pathogen. That's evil. And it gets into your body. In order to like wall off the site of infection, this part is going to pinch. It's going to try to prevent this pathogen from spreading to the rest of the body. It's going to kind of pinch right here. Because this is the way blood is flowing, is this way. So your antibodies restrict, especially IgE, or no, IgE functions later. But first of all, with inflammation, it restricts the spread of an infection by walling off the infection. That's what this is. It's forming a wall, preventing it from spreading. On this side of it, this is where your IgE comes in. Your IgE is going to be produced, and it's going to attach to the antigens, and it's going to stimulate mast cells and basophils to secrete heparin, histamine, and serotonin. The big one I would know is histamine, secreted by your basophils. So this histamine and basophils and everything is going to cause, so you have walling off, but you have now this inflammation. It's getting bigger because we're trying to increase blood flow in order to attack. So these are little macrophages. These are our immune cells. These are good for us. I guess they have different mouths now. I don't know. But those are good for us. So your basophils, your heparin, your serotonin is going to cause vasodilation. So vasodilation is this opening. That's what your IgE, your histamine, your basophils, and mast cells do. And this is going to vasodilate, and this is going to cause inflammation. That's why you have the redness, heat, swelling, and pain. Redness from the increased blood flow. Heat from the blood flow because your blood carries heat. Swelling because it just gets bigger. And pain because it will push against the nerves in your body. And it'll be like, ow, pain. Because this is getting bigger. So typically when you look at this on your finger, it kind of looks like a welt. And it's red because of the blood that is flowing. So yeah, IgE causes the dilation to happen. And an anaphylactic reaction, this is really awful because someone who has an anaphylactic reaction, we'll go into this probably more next week, but anaphylaxis is like when your body freaks out at pollen or something very simple. What happens when you have an anaphylactic reaction is you have dilation throughout your entire body. So everything dilates and your blood pressure drops, which is awful. Because if you don't have blood pressure, blood isn't going to circulate and oxygenate your tissues and everything. So that's why people have an epinephrine pen, EpiPen, so they stick it in their leg, and that dilation then constricts, increases blood flow, and you're back on track again. So we're going to go through that more so next week with the other two worksheets. But for now, vasodilation, allergy, IgE. Next we have, so that's a localized change. Local means it's in one location, it stays there. The next change we're going to have is direct attack. Your antibodies directly attack antigens or diseases and pathogens by 3 different methods: by neutralization, precipitation, and agglutination. Agglutination kind of sounds like glue. It's going to glue to the surface of the antigen. It's going to prevent the antigen from doing something. Precipitation, I'm moving up. This just forms an antigen-antibody complex. So it's kind of important because when you form that complex, it's like you can attack it easier. So precipitation is precipitation. If you see precipitation, it's a form of direct attack. Lastly, we have neutralization. Neutralization happens when the threat is neutralized. So we have our Pac-Man ghost, and he's going to be pretty upset about this, but you know what? So are we. You don't belong in here. Neutralization basically binds and covers it, makes it less harmful. So neutralization, this antibody is just going to directly attack it and just contain it. That's neutralization. Next, we have activation of complement. Now, complement, right here, complement enzyme, this is part of your innate immunity. This is your natural immunity. This is something everybody has. But the activation of it depends on, putting it into action, making it work, depends on your specific immunity. So complement is, if I can zoom in a little more, because you don't need to worry about that. We went over it. So complement is a group of inactive enzymes that carry out effects of an antibody. So the effects of an antibody are then listed in this graph down here. We don't need to worry about that. But in order to activate complement, you need IgM and IgG. So that is that. Did you guys get that okay? Okay. And this is all complement. I'll send it to you and go. And we've recorded this too, so we should see this on another video for sure. So there are 3 ways antibodies react to antigens. Just a quick summary: local change, direct attack, complement enzyme. Activation of complement enzyme, because your complement enzyme is already there, just you activate it. How many forms of local change are there? 1 form. How many forms of direct attack? There are 3 forms of direct attack: your agglutination, precipitation, and the other one that was there. And then 5 forms of complement enzyme. The most effective type of antibody action is the activation of complement enzyme. So if you could choose between all your immune functions, you would want your complement enzyme to activate, that you would want that to work. So that was quite a bit, especially you've been here the whole time. So that concludes worksheet number 5. and also number 4. So that kind of tied in together, just like that. The next one we're going to go through now is number 8, and this is going to be the last worksheet for the day. So, and this has number 8.